Hello and welcome to our video on how to set limits and boundaries with your kids. Setting limits and boundaries is an important part of parenting, as it helps children understand what is expected of them and what behaviors are acceptable. In this video, we will discuss the benefits of setting limits and boundaries, and provide tips and strategies for effectively communicating them to your children. Understand the importance of limits and boundaries. Limits and boundaries provide children with a sense of security and structure. They help them understand what is expected of them and what behaviors are acceptable. They also teach children responsibility and self-control. Communicate clearly and consistently. When setting limits and boundaries, it's important to communicate them clearly and consistently. This means being specific about what is expected and the consequences of not following through. It also means enforcing the limits and boundaries consistently. Led by example. Children learn by example, so it's important to lead by example when setting limits and boundaries. This means setting limits and boundaries for yourself, as well as for your children. It also means being a good role model and following through on your own limits and boundaries. Be flexible. While it's important to be consistent when setting limits and boundaries, it's also important to be flexible. This means being open to adjusting the limits and boundaries as your child grows and develops. Encourage independence. Setting limits and boundaries is not about controlling your child, but rather about encouraging independence. By setting limits and boundaries, you are teaching your child to make good choices and take responsibility for their actions. Listen and empathize. It's important to listen to your child's perspective and understand their feelings. When setting limits and boundaries, it's important to empathize with your child and understand where they are coming from. Setting limits and boundaries is an important part of parenting. By communicating clearly and consistently, leading by example, being flexible, encouraging independence, and listening and empathizing with your child, you can effectively set limits and boundaries and help your child understand what is expected of them. Remember that setting limits and boundaries is not about controlling your child, but rather about helping them grow and develop into responsible and self-sufficient individuals.